story of how far a man will go just to get. So I just got back from seeing Nosferatu and I think we need to talk about it. Hi everyone, if you're new here, my name is Jade. I like to talk about horror movies quite a lot. I have a tendency to just yap, so if that's your thing, stick around. If not, then good luck. So I don't know where to begin with this. I am kind of taken back, but I think in a good way. I didn't expect much because I am not that big on vampire movies. I know that there's like a fair few that I think are incredible. I love The Lost Boys, and that's a great vampire movie. I love Blade, but I know that some people are gonna be like, when I mean that they're some of my favorite vampire movies. I didn't really know what to expect going into Nosferatu. I had heard some good things. Most people are doing it on like a reasonable scale of saying like it's good. They're not being like, oh my god, it's amazing, but it's like, it's good. I've seen a lot of TikTok edits, which I guess to some degree kind of spoiled a little bit for me, but not on like that big of an extent for me to be like, oh well, that's it, I've seen the movie basically. I have heard only one person absolutely slate it that I know, and they're very big on vampires and Nosferatu generally, so maybe that's why. But also when I did discuss their reasoning with them, I don't quite agree with their points. So I'm going to try and not spoil this movie as much as I physically can for the first half of this video. I'll leave the spoilers to the end. So I would say the casting of this movie was absolutely incredible. Lily Rose Depp's performance was absolutely insane. She did all those like fitting body movements, all like just herself. Nothing was like really edited, and I thought that was kind of insane. If she doesn't get an award for this, I will be shocked, because she truly deserves it, because the performance that she gave was absolutely phenomenal. I was so surprised. I don't think I've ever seen her really in anything before other than that one TV show that she did that got absolutely bashed for being terrible, and I only saw like a little bit of it. I'm normally not for nepo babies because they are just handed things that regular people will have to work their asses off for years just to even get anywhere near what they can get just given to them essentially. But I would say Lily Rose Depp in this case is an exception. She is incredible for sure. I'm sure most people are fully aware there were already adaptations of Nosferatu done before. There was the one in the 20s and there was one in the 70s. Originally the story was based off of Bram Stoker's Dracula. They just kind of changed it a little bit, and I know there was a lot of suing copyright related things way back in the day about this basically being like a complete rip-off of Dracula, which I suppose to some degree it was. So for the people that are arguing that this is too much like the original Bram Stoker's Dracula, I think we're forgetting that there's a reason for that, you know? Another thing I think I need to add when it comes to my opinion based off of this movie is that I am not really one that likes, and I know it's gonna sound really funny or like a bit unusual, but I don't really like period set movies, and I don't know why. There's just something about them that I'm like, it doesn't do it for me usually, and I don't know what it is, but I just don't usually gravitate towards them. So a part of me, when I saw the trailer of this, as much as I thought the trailer was really good, I loved that it barely showed any part of the actual story itself, because it gave you more, I suppose, to make up in your head of what you think could happen. I know it's based on another movie / 2 other movies, but at least you can kind of, in your own perspective, come up with what you think is going to happen. If you haven't seen any of the other two, it's completely fresh, essentially, to you. I would say this isn't my most anticipated movie of 2025. I would argue at the minute that 28 Years Later is the one I'm looking forward the most to, but I was very curious about this one. I'm not really one that's big on the whole period-centered monster, essentially, if that makes sense. I'm not really one for vampire movies in general. So I did go into this completely with an open mind. I have seen the original, I have seen the 1920s version, but not enough of a recent time where I could basically give, I would say, a good enough comparison. I only remembered some of the things to compare it in when it came into that. So I think that because I hadn't seen the 20s version in years, I didn't really have a lot to fully base it off of. So I would actually argue that the most recent example of Nosferatu I've seen is from SpongeBob, if I'm being brutally honest with you.
Wait! If that was you on the phone and you on the bus, then who was flickering the lights? Nosferatu!
If I was to rate this movie out of 5, it could be, I would say it's a strong 4. It's a very strong 4. It exceeded my expectations in many ways. I know that a lot of people are basically being like, oh, it's just like a horny vampire movie. But I feel like, generally speaking, when we're going into the monster type of character, when it comes to vampires, they are generally the horny ones, if I'm saying so myself, you know. It's funny when you think about the fact that this storyline is essentially Count Orlok, so Nosferatu, essentially he just wants to pay his mortgage and then decides to get sassy about the fact that the woman child at the time, I suppose, that he was into has got married. So now he's a bit like, wait a minute, I'm not cool with this. The guy that's trying to help me pay my mortgage has taken my woman from years ago that I kind of forgot about, my ex-situationship, so therefore I'm going to give her 3 days to sort this shit out. I guess I'm kind of getting into more of the spoiler territory now, because before I'm just kind of talking about the general premise of it and the fact that it's good. For some reason, I couldn't help but think that the moment when they were on the ship, I was giggling to myself at the premise of Count Orlok putting himself in that box, in the little shipping container, and just lying there like... doing like a little Peter Griffin laugh while he's in there or something like that, knowing that they're going to ship him straight into Germany just to ruin everyone's day. I actually saw some interesting facts about this movie before, and I thought it was interesting that they chose to use all live rats for this movie as well, so none of it was like CGI, which I thought was crazy, because when you can see how many rats there are, I was constantly like paranoid, especially when they're going into the area which Nosferatu's tomb would have been. When they're going into there's rats all over the floor. I was constantly like getting stressed, like don't step on a rat, don't step on a rat. Like I don't know how they did it. I would have been so paranoid that I was going to stand on one. Also, Bill Skarsgård as well apparently went to an opera coach just so he could try and get his voice deeper, which was quite interesting. And in all fairness, I feel like he did really well with this voice. A lot of people were asking whether it should have been a different actor completely altogether to do it, but I quite liked his voice. I couldn't tell it was him, and I feel like that, if anything, is a sign that he's done a really good job of it. Nicholas Hoult as well, great, absolutely incredible performance. That guy has this insane skill of being terrified. Any movie that I've seen him in, whenever he has to show any fear, it's like that's his shit. I don't know if anyone else sees that, but you know when some people have I feel like some actors have certain strengths when it comes to whatever like emotion they're portraying, and his is definitely fear. Like that is his thing. Willem Dafoe, I think generally, like I love him anyway, I'm going to be biased about him. I think everything that he's done is pretty much perfect. Even Antichrist, I thought he was good in that. I wouldn't recommend watching Antichrist really, unless you want to be a little bit traumatized. It's a bit of an uncomfortable watch, but I still feel like he acted very well in it, and in this one he also did act exceedingly well once again. I absolutely love Willem Dafoe. The only thing I'm gonna say, I cannot fault any of the actors. I don't think there was one actor where I was a bit like, you know, I genuinely thought all of them were solid performances, absolutely. Lily Rose generally is up here, well the rest are maybe there, but that's still high up, you know? The one problem I will say that I did have with this was the hair pieces. I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but It was giving Timu. Why were they laid like that? I was questioning whether this was on purpose, but you could just tell that it was a wig, and I feel as though that surely wasn't the point, right? And it stressed me out. I kept staring at it and I didn't want to, but that I would say that is like the one thing for me that was a bit like, surely they had more of a budget to get some better wigs. Apparently these wigs were human hair wigs, but it was giving human hair wigs from Timu, if I'm being honest with you.
When will you wear wigs?
The last shot of this movie is when Nosferatu, Count Orlok, is lying on top of Ellen, so Lily Rose Depp's character, after they've had a fun night, I'm assuming, you know? And she's made him stay a little bit longer just so he obviously burns away in the daylight, and all of his eyes, his nose, mouth, everything's bleeding. Vampires, garlic, stake through the heart, sunlight kills them off, unless you're in Twilight and then you just sparkle, and I don't think the other things really count. Twist the head off and burn the body, I think that's Twilight, right? A lot of people have been saying this is like a horny goth girl movie, and I do see it. I'm not gonna lie, I do understand, but I feel like we need to look at it from the perspective that it is a really well made adaptation. Don't feel like we should be discrediting it because of that, because as I said, the performances were incredible. The storyline is following the original storyline. There's like the tiniest parts that have been changed, but it's so minimal. I think that if you're a fan, you could find more faults than I do. I don't find that many because I kind of had it still fresh in my head as like I kind of had it fresh in my head as a new experience. As I said, the most recent watch of Nosferatu in general that I've seen in the longest amount of time was literally SpongeBob. So maybe I'm not the best judge of this. Considering I am quite picky with horror movies, I wasn't a fan. Like, usually adaptations I'm not that big of a fan of in general. I am absolutely terrified for American Psycho to be remade. I really do not know how to feel about that. I know that the first Omen was like a new one, but also it was like meant to be like the beginning of the Omen. That movie, I could not enjoy that one whatsoever. So I am quite picky with movies generally. So if I'm saying that this is good, I would like to think it's actually good, you know? I think if you're not thinking too hard into it or comparing it too hard, generally, that's what she said, you'll probably enjoy it a lot more. I really do think it's enjoyable. It's a long movie, and I'm pretty sure the other two are very long movies as well, so it makes sense. But it's shot really well, acted really well, and it has some really beautiful camera shots for sure. That final shot, as I said, the end of the movie, I know what the way I described it probably sounded a bit of a mess, and I suppose it was a mess, but the last part where she was like getting the Count to stay like an extra minute, you know, so he'd be in the sunlight, was the same as to her in the beginning when she was saying to her husband to stay a minute longer. I kind of liked that they did that little bit, like that little parallel. I thought that was kind of cool. So essentially, to narrow it down, this movie was the story of how far a man will go just to get. As I said, in all, I really enjoyed this. I do recommend this to other people, especially. I would say that the only thing I have a problem with is I feel like it could have been scarier. I feel like the design of Nosferatu himself was cool. I enjoyed the mustache. I thought that was nice. But I do feel like they could have made him a little bit more scary. It was definitely missing some more of like the scare tactics when it comes to horror movies, but I don't know if that's what they kind of wanted anyway. Maybe they wanted it to be more of the story, less of the horror, if that makes sense. But then I feel like it's a horror story, so. But generally speaking, I really enjoyed this movie. I would watch it again. I'm not necessarily in a rush to watch it again because it's quite a long movie and I feel like I'd have to, you know, fully have a day to myself to really watch it and enjoy it again. Basically, when it comes to this, the only issues I have with this movie are the Timu wigs and the fact that it could have been scarier. As I said, if the goal wasn't to make it necessarily a really scary movie, then they did it fine. They did it absolutely incredible. The casting for this was pretty much perfect. I don't know who else would have really done the roles as good or even better. I suppose there could be options, but from what I witnessed, I feel like it didn't need anything else. I feel like there wasn't really anyone that came to mind when I thought, oh, this could be better, you know? That was my first new release watch of the year, and I would say it's a very positive start because I didn't hate it. That's definitely very good. I'm looking forward to what the next one is. I have no idea what's next out, but I am really looking forward to 28 Years Later. Definitely go and see it. Let me know your own opinion if you have already seen it. I know a lot of people already have because it was out in the US earlier, and it was out in the UK, I think, New Year's Day. Let me know if you have seen it and your opinion on it, if you thought it was good as the original, or if you thought it was better if you haven't seen the original, or you just don't give a shit in general. I don't know. Once again, thank you for watching. I will try and get as many reviews out as I can for things. I know that I'm not some professional reviewer. I just kind of yap on and tell you my opinion on things. But if you stick around to watch it, I appreciate you. So thank you very much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.